Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, Parler, and Instagram. And of course, be sure to visit www.mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
I'm Tiffany, your new neighbor.
I'm Aaron. This is my partner.
Hi.
Wow. I'm just so happy we have some fresh faces in the neighborhood.
Love is all that matters.
I'm not sure most people would actually agree with that.
I find it disgusting how false stereotypes shape public opinion.
Aaron, last night, I think I saw something.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 293. Out now exclusively on Shudder is Spiral, an absolutely riveting, terrifying, and incredibly relevant horror movie that follows a same-sex couple and their daughter as they move to a small town, only to find that under the suburban facade lies a dark and disturbing secret. Or is there? With momentum found in its engrossing mystery and a relevant social message providing the depth, Spiral also features terrific performances and filmmaking ingenuity, making it one of my favourite movies of 2020 so far. Joining me now to talk about Spiral is the film's director, Kurtis David Harder. Kurtis, I thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
So, what I find really interesting about this is this kind of collective of film talent that you are attached to in making these films. I'm talking particularly about Colin Minihan and John Poliquin, otherwise known as the Vicious Brothers. In this, Spiral is kind of like the latest film in a stable of movies that you guys have worked on together, Harpoon and Stillborn being the others. However, they've had experience in the horror genre as directors. This is the first time you've directed a horror movie. Having hung around him so time and working with him as a producer on different films, was horror something that you always wanted to direct, considering you kind of been around it for some time now?
No, I honestly fell into it. It was I was learning so much from Colin, who I directed kind of my first movie when I was a teenager and moved out to Vancouver. And Colin was out there directing all these like music videos that I started actually working as a camera assistant on. And it wasn't until I kind of directed my second feature, In Control, which was more of a sci-fi, but gets a little bit into kind of the strangeness, that Colin kind of reached out and we started producing together. And so that our first project, kind of as myself as a producer and Colin as a producer, was Stillborn. And that kind of led on to What Keeps You Alive and Z. And I'd kind of been learning about the genre a lot. I didn't grow up watching horror movies, but kind of fell in love with the genre when we started making Stillborn, because I was like, I should probably know about the genre that I'm helping produce. So I ended up watching kind of all the classics and really fell in love with the genre and kind of came to appreciate how it's crafted and watching Colin direct and people like Brandon Christensen and learning a lot from kind of their techniques and storytelling abilities in the genre space.
When you become attached to this story of Spiral, which Colin and John wrote, what differences is there in the first initial screenplay that you received compared to what is on the screen now? And I don't want to go into spoilers, but I'm just kind of curious as to, usually when a director jumps on, they might want to put their own take on stuff. Did you have something that you wanted to add to the story that wasn't there beforehand?
Yeah, I think it just exploring the characters and fleshing out the characters. It was nice that we had Colin and JP on the shoot for a lot of it. Just having the people that wrote the script and kind of the origins of the story to be able to kind of bounce ideas back and forth and in prep, kind of looking at kind of what we're trying to say with kind of motifs and themes and being able to really kind of dive deep and have these kind of roundtable discussions about what we're really trying to say and kind of exploring the different character motives and themes. Yeah. One
of those things that I think makes the film work so well is that it's a really grounded movie. There's a real aspect to it all, and especially in regards to the trauma. of the main character in the film, Malik. He goes through a hate crime. He has experience with a hate crime as a young man, and that kind of just really motivates him and kind of like really says everything about who he is as a man and as a character, and kind of motivates the film and the pacing and the paranoia and everything about it. How important was it to really establish those personal stakes for the movie to work? You know, the fear and the paranoia that really drives this film.
I think it's very important. I think when you're looking at a movie like this, it is really about kind of the personal experience and the journey that you're going through with someone, and kind of going through this aspect of his own disintegration of looking out into the world, and is there really a threat, or is this just kind of an internalized kind of issue that he's been going through because of this trauma? Is he kind of scarred by that, or is there truly a threat out there? And I think, Jeffrey Barry Chapman brought a lot to the thing. He had actually grown up as the only black gay kid in a small town in Alberta, Canada. So he'd kind of experienced, not to the same extent, but a lot of kind of what was going on in the film. So he brought a lot to the character and to that kind of levity that Malik has.
Is it true that the initial draft didn't have the character of Malik, or whatever the character's name beforehand? If he wasn't a black man, it was Jeffrey himself who suggested to make that change?
Yeah, we didn't have an ethnicity kind of set in mind, and Jeffrey actually was a good friend of JP and read the script, and he kind of proposed that it's like this would make a lot more sense as that for a number of reasons. He pitched it to Colin and JP, and when he came on to the project, obviously, it made a lot of sense.
It's just such a terrific performance. I know that he's been around in a long time, and he's on TV. I don't watch much TV, so I haven't seen him before. This is the first time I've seen him on screen. I think it's just an absolutely fantastic performance. I really do hope that at the end of the year that hopefully there will be some sort of end of year recognition in regards to him, in regards to awards and such, because he really does deserve it. I want to talk about the timeline of the movie in regards to the period that the film's set. I don't remember seeing a specific date in the movie. I'm assuming, though, we're talking mid-90s here?
Yep. Yeah, the film was based 1995. I think it's kind of like that. It was really a watershed moment in kind of the game movements and just kind of like obviously a very trying time for the gay community with kind of the AIDS epidemic and the politics at play. So I think like there are a lot of things that we can apply to 2020, especially now with kind of like the different movements that are happening with BLM and kind of the political unrest that we're seeing. So there's a lot of parallels that we do deal with these kind of cycles of where we're always looking for kind of an outlet to blame. And I think in the 90s, the gay community definitely got the brunt of a lot of hatred.
Was there also an appeal to work in the film old technologies such as, old computers, VHS, stuff like that, staying away from the current climate of social media and such? Because I don't know about you, but I find that sometimes having that aspect of instant connectivity through devices and such can kind of take away suspense in a suspense movie. Was that an appeal to you as well?
Absolutely. I grew up in the 90s as a kid. I think going back and being able to kind of explore that as an aesthetic was a lot of fun. Kind of we had an empty house that we were able to fill with all this 90s stuff, and we set decked it from scratch, and it was really cool. It's kind of like a time capsule where you walk into this house and suddenly it's 30 years ago. So that to me was really fun to kind of explore that. There is always, like with modern movies, it's always hard to get around cell phones and these different things where the internet's always there. The connectivity can realistically kind of harm your ability to keep people isolated. So I think in the 90s it makes that a lot easier. But I think it was a lot of fun to kind of play around with these 90s computers that I hadn't been on for 15 years or so.
I wanted to talk a little bit now about the kind of like the mystery aspects of the movie. And if I do go into anything spoilerish, you let me know straight away. There is an aspect about the film. There's an importance in regards to symbols, in regards to paintings, in regards to ritual. I'm just curious, how much of a backstory did you place into these aspects? Is there kind of like an unofficial philosophy or unofficial kind of I don't want to go too far into my take, but is it like an unofficial kind of philosophy behind the scenes that you tap into that isn't necessarily spoken of in the film, but is always there throughout the movie?
Yeah, I'll be careful what I say because I don't want to spoil too much, but we definitely did kind of a lot of research into kind of the occult stuff and finding kind of that symbolism that matches what we were going for with kind of the cycles. And a big thing of the film is kind of the cyclical nature of our culture and what we as a culture can kind of fall into in terms of that. So finding stuff that kind of matches that was really important.
When it comes to that kind of imagery, and once again, we're kind of delving back into what we were talking before about symbology and such. When it comes to that kind of imagery, how do you like to approach your work in that way? Do you visualize it through storyboards? Is it just talking it out? Is it just experimenting on a day? How do you like to approach that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I tend to storyboard a lot and plan out the visuals kind of in advance. The cinematographer Bradley Stuckel is someone I've worked with on a couple different films. Very, very talented guy. So we would spend a lot of time just talking about kind of movies we liked, or from an aesthetic perspective. There's another 90s movie called Super Dark Times that we referenced quite a bit. It's a beautiful film. We ended up shooting kind of an anamorphic as well. But in terms of like the location, just driving around, I mean, that bridge is somewhere I'd spent time on before. Like I'd shot on it like 10 years ago and just loved the visual of kind of the overarching bridge. The locations to me are so important. It's the backdrop of your film. So when you're trying to find a house or an outside location, I think just finding something that really matches with the atmosphere and the mood that you're trying to evoke.
The film touches on cults, and it's something that's become much more prominent now in filmmaking, especially horror movies. It's a fascination that a lot of people have as well. Do you think this fascination in regards to cults and quasi-religious groups and these kind of fanaticism, etc., do you think that has come above because now more than ever there's kind of like a sense of tribalism amongst us all?
Absolutely. I think we're in a really, really fascinating time politically where we're splitting apart, it seems, at least in the West. I'm not sure how it is in Australia, but in North America, it feels like the left and the right just keep kind of pulling apart. And I think the cults are just really fascinating because it's just kind of human nature and how we connect. And why do we fall into these kind of ideologies of these kind of religious sects? And why do we need kind of these kind of group mentality? I think it is really fascinating, the us versus them, and not really being able to look at your own group as the bad guy and the faults that we might have on our own side. So I find cults utterly fascinating. I grew up in a Christian church. Both my grandparents were pastors, and I left the church at a young age. But I think I've always been fascinated with religion and kind of just these kind of different aspects of how we act in groups and how we kind of look for meaning.
Well, I'll tell you what, Spiral is just such a terrific movie. I absolutely enjoyed watching it, and I loved talking to you about it as well, Kurtis. And for everyone out there, you can check out Spiral now on Shudder. We're very fortunate down here in Australia. Shudder has become available to us here a couple of months ago, so people can now subscribe and log in and watch so many cool films. And I think Shudder is going to be the top on the list of many people, and I know I'm going to highly recommend it in my review as well. So, Kurtis, I thank you very much for your time and congratulations with the movie.
Cool. Thank you so much, Matthew.